امرالله صالح یکی از پیروان و نزدیکترین دوستان احمد شاه مسعود اینجا تشریف آوردن، به علاقمندی شدید تصمیم گرفتن که اینجا بیاین و کریستوفر در لاهن با آقای امرالله صالح صحبتاشان مستفید شدن و علاقمندیشان بیشتر شد و خواستن که یک لوح افتخاری، کسی که به خاطر صلح مبارزه میکنن و تلاش های خستگی ناپذیر میکنن، که لوح افتخاری را خدمت امرالله صالح توسط سکرتر جنرال وین کوتسی به اینا تقدیم بکنن و آرزوی موفقیت بیشتر برشان بکنن. I would like to invite Mr. Wim Coetzee, the Secretary General of UPF, for explanation, in short, please, explanation about UPF and presenting the Peace Federation Certificate Diploma to Mr. Amrullah Saleh.
So, ladies and gentlemen, but ladies are not here maybe, but mostly gentlemen. Thank you for inviting our organization here. I'm the secretary and I am allowed to say a few words about the organization. So the slogan of the organization is to strive for peace based on the universal values and by the power of true love and by living for the sake of others. So that is quite idealistic in a world with a kind of different reality often. Especially for you in Afghanistan, this is still a battle to come to a kind of better system. So when we started activities for Afghanistan, it was in the 80s. We had still a smaller organization, Federation for Peace, and we put a cross in front of the Russian consulate in Amsterdam to protest against the Russian invasion in Afghanistan. And other people had put another cross that was against the United States, who have also consulate nearly next to the Russian one. And that was about the death of journalists in El Salvador. The cross against America stayed quite long, but this cross in front of the Russians was always taken away. So we said that's not fair. We protest for peace, of course. So it has to be both sides have to be told peace is needed, Russians and Americans. So in the end, all the crosses went away and it became a parking place. But that was the first time we saw something of Afghanistan. That was in the time that the Russians were trying to occupy you. But they didn't manage. So you already showed some determination and courage to make your own country a free country. Now, in this time of the world, we have, of course, the desire that all nations are supposed to become democratic. That is an ideal of democracy. But what is democracy? So if you look at the history of Europe, we see that we had kind of two types of democracy. One centered on a kind of state control. The state became the one that had to change the people and the world, and that ended up in a communist society where state control is quite strong. Another type is more the English and American tradition that was for freedom, especially religious freedom. And in the end, not the state was the final authority, but the Creator, God. So these two systems, they fought each other, and in the end you can say the Western democracy type was kind of victorious, but not so much on their vision, but more on their economic success. And now we see that the whole world nearly is focusing on the economy more than on a certain vision. So what is lacking, and maybe that was also mentioned in The Hague, is that Western democracies have not such a developed vision, world vision, to make an ideal world. They're already satisfied when everything is quite stable and peaceful, and that countries who are not so good are kind of under control or do not hurt themselves. So muddling through, you could mention it, but there's not so clear strategy. And so the communists had a clear strategy. They had a worldview, they had an idea of history, and they said, this is how the world should be, and we are all comrades. That was the idea. But it was focused on materialism and not on spiritual values. And there we get a problem. In the end, it is focused on people, and in the end focused on kind of dictators, leaders who are supposed to know how the world should be. We know Mao, we know Stalin, we know these types of people. And in the West, you can say, we got stuck in just having freedom, and then a free market, more or less, and some human rights. But to expand that, we don't think that is so needed, and if we do that, we do it often with a half heart. So when you see an enemy, for instance, if we call in Afghanistan there are certain enemies, and we say we come there and we go back in 2 years, then this kind of enemy will probably laugh. And there's no determination to really conquer the enemy. They just do some kind of small actions that disturb people very much and hit them and make a lot of victims. And then they will be gone again. So there's no real determination. And in Libya we see a bit similar. They want to protect the citizens. And as far as we can see, it is Mr. Gaddafi who shoots on citizens. So if you say, well, when we take away Mr. Gaddafi and bring him to the International Court in The Hague, then at least the leader of the shooting on the citizens is gone. But no, we don't want to do that, because we think that makes a lot of noise and maybe we don't get enough allies for that. So we are like a surgeon who say, well, we let the tumor there, but we clean it a little bit around the tumor, but we don't solve this. So then you cannot get good results. It might take a long time before something will turn to become better. So for Universal Peace Federation, we say, well, of course, violence should not be the method. Like in communism, violence was part of the philosophy. Sometimes you needed violence, and then in the end they hoped it would turn into dialogue and comradeship. But if you always learn to fight and always learn to use violence, how can you change into a peaceful person who doesn't use violence? So violence is not the main method to change the world. It can be necessary. We say it's necessary to defend yourself and to defend the weak people. If people are victimized, like in many nations in Africa, we need to do something about it so that they can also have freedom and can develop themselves. Democracy is also like a hardware. It's a system. You can choose your leader maybe, but it very much depends also on the software. What kind of quality is the democracy? What kind of quality have the citizens? We know that Germany was at a certain moment choosing Hitler as the person who was supposed to lead the country. And that was a dictator in the end. And so many times it's called a democracy and people choose the wrong people and we get dictators. In Africa there are many examples of that also. So the quality of the people is very important. And if you look at the development of democracy in Europe, we see there was also a spiritual element, and that was in Protestantism, for instance, that persons read the Bible and try to connect to the Creator, and from there become a responsible citizen and try to manage also good government. So if there is a Creator, and if He created man, then the government should also follow a certain way the Creator made man. And one thing is, of course, freedom. We are made in freedom, and God doesn't use us as a robot, so you are free, you can have choices. And how to get the right choices is by values. So from the Creator, values are coming. So the religions are supposed to be the ones who produce the values, and they also do. But they also do fighting. So religions are not always seen as the one who can bring a solution, because the people will point out they were always fighting each other, and that is also true. Another aspect of religion is actually that they also produced kind of holy people, people who have a kind of good example function. So therefore it is important to see the potential of the religions on the good side, because they can bring harmony, they can bring good citizens and the values that we need to live by. So that's why we say the universal values, which is in the core of all the religions, can help us to give the spiritual backbone for democracy. If that is lacking, you will get stuck. You will have not a vision to bring a good world. So therefore, we think it is very important to see that spiritual element in the process of democracy. And wherever you are, whether it is in North Africa or Afghanistan, I think this is a very good aspect. For Afghanistan, you could say a model in Europe is a little bit there. You know Switzerland maybe, with all these high mountains. Most people thought that country is worthless, but it became one of the richest countries, even with the high mountains and no flat land. They knew how to make tunnels in the mountains and use the water coming down from the mountains for electricity, and so you have electric trains. And it is in the middle of Europe, so a lot of transport goes to Switzerland. Well, the same could be with Afghanistan. If you have some vision for the future, it could be one of the richest countries in the world, because all the connections between China, India, and also Iran and Turkey, these kind of trade roads are there. So, at least in an external way, there is a lot of hope, I think. But it has to be solved by uniting the people centered on a vision and universal values. We think that Mr. Saleh is trying to also bring peace in that country. I would like to give him the certificate for the Peace Ambassador. So, Peace Ambassador is somebody who lives for the sake of others, and many people in government and in this kind of movement are trying to improve the quality of life and bring the nation to a better level. So that's why we would like to recognize the efforts of Mr. Saleh and would like to offer him the certificate. And,
on behalf of myself and with the permission of the audience, on their behalf and on the behalf of the Afghan people, to the extent I can represent them, I fully agree with what you said, and I wholeheartedly want to thank you. Thank you very much.